Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the special meeting, Pierce County Council special meeting for April 16th, 2024. The time is 4:04 p.m. Thank you for those who are joining us at our special meeting time of 4 o'clock. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilmember Campbell.
Here.
Councilmember Krueger.
Here.
Councilmember Denson.
Excused.
Councilmember Herrera.
Here.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Here.
Councilmember Morrell.
Here.
And Councilmember Mello.
Excused.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes present.
All right, and with 5 members present, we do have a quorum. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag led by Councilmember Hitchin, and followed by a moment of silence dedicated to our men and women serving overseas in the military, and then the land acknowledgement read by Councilmember Hitchin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish tribes. Coast Salish people have lived on and stewarded these lands in time immemorial and continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is just one small step towards true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the Indigenous people of this land. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We are now at Section 4, approval of our agenda. Are there any objections to approving today's agenda as presented? Seeing none, seeing no objection, the agenda is approved. On tonight's council agenda, there will be multiple opportunities for public comment. On the consent agenda, you may provide comment on any final action item. This does not include items placed on consent agenda for introduction or scheduling. On today's consent agenda, there are 3 grants for approval. During Section 9 of the agenda, we will take public comment on the one resolution listed, and finally, under community forum, there'll be an opportunity to address the council on any topic that is not on today's agenda. For information on the rules and public participation, please review the bottom of page 1 of today's agenda. At 5 o'clock, part of the reason we're having the evening meeting is to a presentation from our performance audit that has to be given in the evening meeting. So at 5 o'clock or after 5 o'clock, we'll be given that presentation. If time permits, we may allow any public comment on that, but we'll see where we are at time at that point. We now have the consent agenda before us. Does any member wish to pull any item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded on the consent agenda, and I will now like public comment on the consent agenda. There's an opportunity to provide comment on any final action on the consent agenda. Please state your name if you'd like it to be on the record. Keep your remarks to 3 minutes and direct all comments to the chair. I'll start with those in chambers. Is there anyone in chambers wishing to make comment on consent agenda? Seeing none, I will go to Zoom. Mr. Weinsberry?
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment on any final action items, press the raise hand icon on Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And I see no hands at this time, Vice Chair.
Okay, seeing no hands at this time, I will close the public comment, bring it back to the council. We have in front of us a motion to approve the consent agenda. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Krueger.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morrell.
Aye.
And Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 5 ayes.
All right, unanimously adopted. The consent agenda is approved. That brings us to section 6, messages from judges, executive judges and prosecuting attorney. A message from the executive transmitting the following ordinances which were approved and signed on April 8th, 2024. Ordinance number O 2024-512, an ordinance of the Pierce County Council ratifying the collective bargaining agreement reached with the American Federation of State, County, Municipal Employees, AFL-CIO, ASME Council 28, Washington State Federal State Employees. Also, ordinance number O 2024-513, an ordinance of the Pierce County Council ratifying the collective bargaining agreement reached with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, AFL-CIO, local number 483. Next is proclamations, recognitions, and awards. First up, we have a proclamation of the Pierce County Council proclaiming April 22nd, 2024 as Earth Day in Pierce County. Today, the council proclaims April 22nd, 2024 as Earth Day in Pierce County. I'd like to invite Laura Reeser and Kyla Wilson. And if I didn't quite get those correct, please correct me. Please come on up to the podium as I will read into the proclamation into the record. Let me find it here. Thank you very much for taking time to come out and join us today. This is a proclamation of the Pierce County Council proclaiming April 22nd, 2024 as Earth Day in Pierce County, Washington. Whereas on April 22nd, 1970, millions of Americans joined in common cause to demand basic protections to safeguard our planet for future generations, and rooted in this cause came the creation of the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, and landmark legislation that protects the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the animals that live alongside us. And whereas despite these pivotal accomplishments that have come to define America's commitment to environmental protection, the world has seen an increased demand for natural resources, laws that weaken the EPA and our collective ability to care for our world, an acceleration in human-caused climate change through pollution, deforestation, and other forms of environmental degradation that threatens the delicate balance of our planet's ecosystems, endangering life in all its forms. And whereas in Washington state, climate and the protection of our national environment have been key priorities, reflected in the passage of the Climate Commitment Act that makes long-lasting investments in greenhouse gas reductions and directs the Department of Ecology to design and implement a cap and invest program to reduce statewide greenhouse gas emissions. And whereas this program works by setting an emissions limit or cap and then lowering that cap over time to ensure Washington state meets the greenhouse gas reduction commitments set in state law. Whereas this is only the second such program in the United States, and its cap and invest approach uses the powers of supply and demand to incentivize businesses to cut their emissions and use whatever strategy they think is best to encouraging innovation and empowering our long history of market-driven solutions. Whereas locally in Pierce County, we are in the process of updating its comprehensive plan, which includes a new section that will establish planning guidance to address the growing threats of climate change. And whereas in March 2021, the Pierce County Council adopted Pierce County Sustainability 2030 Plan with the goal to reduce countywide and county government greenhouse gas emissions by 45% by 2030. And whereas Sustainability 2030 focuses on 5 areas: energy and built environment, transportation, consumption and waste management, carbon sequestration, and education and outreach. And whereas while we have made remarkable progress in protecting our health and our environment, we know that work is not yet finished. We have a role to play in ensuring that we do not pass a world beyond repair to our children. Whereas as we reflect on the historic day of activism and stewardship that is Earth Day, let us embrace our commitment protecting Pierce County, Washington, along with its abundant natural resources for future generations, Now therefore, be it proclaimed on this, the 16th day of April 2024 by the Pierce County Council that Monday, April 22nd, 2024 is Earth Day in Pierce County, Washington. Let's have a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for your being here to receive the proclamations. And so we invite you to make a few remarks.
Wonderful, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here in person as opposed to on the computer. So it's a nice chance to see all your faces.
And please do introduce yourself
Yep,
for the
I
record,
will.
and the microphone pulls down there a little.
Perfect. Okay. So for the record, my name is Laura Reeser. I'm the planning supervisor in sustainable resources. I've been in the position for about a year and a half, and it's been an exciting time. And I am happy to be here to accept this proclamation. It's very exciting to see it reaffirmed. I think we all have our stories of growing up in the spaces that we have, seeing the impacts of the environment around us and to the families and in our communities. I grew up in the Northeast in Connecticut, in coastal Connecticut, on the Puget Sound. Sorry, Puget Sound is really known. On the Long Island Sound. And growing up as a young person there, our beaches were often closed. It was really confusing to me, like why this would happen. There was a lot of pollution that happened and that came up on our beaches. And so as a young person seeing we can't access our spaces because of this, so it was a risk. I know lots of us have these experiences. My grandparents grew up on the Chesapeake Bay in Maryland, and there's a similar story with the blue crab there and the dead zones that happen as a result of pollution there, and the impact to the economy and to the fisheries there. And I have family who were not able to participate as much as they could in the fisheries as a result. And so we all have these personal stories and narratives, and so this is part of our work and why I think a proclamation like this is so important. And it's really about the connection, right? This is about the connections between each other. It's understanding our story, understanding other stories, and how we all connect. And so this is really what drives the people I work with, our division, the 20-plus people who are so dedicated in Pierce County, in our division and across. I've been really impressed to see this commitment into this work. This is very purposeful. And so, yeah, I just wanted to celebrate this and to honor the work and the commitment that you all have put into this, and to say that you have a lot of great vision, and there's some really amazing projects happening. And the part of the declaration that I really want to highlight is that we all have a part to play, and I think it's up to us to understand, like, how do we want to contribute? How do we want to show up in our communities? And then how do we want to, it's never too late, so how do we want to participate? Kyla Wilson is here, so she's going to share a couple of things about what's going on in Earth Month.
Thank you, Council. For the record, my name is Kyla Wilson. I'm our Sustainability 2030 Plan lead, and I'm going to just share some opportunities for Earth Day that our community can participate in. In the Sustainable Resources Division, we treat every day like Earth Day because it's the work we do every day. But the really special thing about this time every year is the opportunity to get out in the community. Everyone is waking up with the spring and wants to get out. And so Earth Day is a really amazing opportunity for our community to get more involved in environmental protection and community events. So this year for Earth Day, we brought back the Pierce County Earth Month calendar, which is a great resource for community members who would like to find out events that they can participate in, different classes that the Sustainable Resources Division and others are hosting to learn more about our environment and how we can participate in protecting the environment. So we have some upcoming classes like demystifying recycling to make sure that we're doing our best to recycle correctly, some information about composting that's coming up as well, and all that information can be found at the Pierce County Earth Month website. And we are also very excited to be partnering for the second year to have a Pierce County Earth Day celebration with the Parks Department at our Habitat Meridian Park. That'll be this Saturday from noon to 4 p.m. at Habitat Meridian Park. And it's going to be a great celebration of Earth Day. There's going to be different community organizations and the county out having different tables and activities going on. I believe our new litter pickup truck will be there, and we will be hosting a naming contest for the litter truck, so community members can come out and see the new truck, provide a naming of the truck, and It's been a really fun to partner with Parks on putting that event together and bringing more community organizations out to Habitat Meridian. I also wanted to mention that we launched a Sustainable Solutions series of classes that kicked off last month, and every month we will have 4 classes available, so 1 per week, to the community, and all of those upcoming classes can be found on the Earth Month page or by going to the Pierce County Sustainable Resources page as well. And another really exciting thing that's happening this year with Earth Month and Earth Day is the kickoff of our curbside food waste collection program, which I know you all heard about earlier this week as well. We're really excited to be able to accept food waste in our yard waste curbside bins now, starting on Earth Day. And that is all. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for all that work. Hang on just a moment. We'll get a few comments from some of the council members here, and then we'll have you come up and receive the proclamation and take a picture. We'll start with Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you both for the work you do in the community, and I truly appreciate the education aspect of the work that Sustainable Resources does and the direct connection you have in some of our school districts. I know I attended a variety of different events where you're soliciting voices of all ages from across our county to talk about what our community needs. And I'm looking forward to the rollout. I still am mystified by the food waste thing, so I'm going to trust that y'all have figured out exactly how that's going to work. But when I saw pizza could go in, I was just like, no, it's against the rules. So not pizza boxes though, but pizza. So still don't understand, but I'll figure it out, but very excited. The last thing, I know a lot of our communities have park appreciation programming that's happening over the next couple of weeks. I have several in my district. I think Pierce County Parks has some as well. So if you're into doing a little bit of labor on behalf of your community, look and see if any of your parks are hosting something. They kind of tend to tie them together. So and see where you can pitch in for your parks and your green spaces that exist, because we need to keep them green and healthy, and it takes a little TLC to make that happen. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hitchin. And I also want to thank you for taking the time and all your leadership in leading with education. As Councilmember Hitchin said, it's important that we get out there. But Laura, when you were talking, you talked about the dead zones off the East Coast, and that happened so long ago, or feels like so long ago, for many of us, that sometimes we forget, why, as was mentioned here, the EPA was created and what was happening, with rivers literally catching on fire, complete dead zones, collapse, almost the American bison almost completely eliminated, and it's forgotten how close we came many years ago. And so I think it's good to stop and celebrate how far we've come, but we still have to go after some of those root causes that are continuing to wreak havoc on our environment, because we all live in it too. So it's important. It would not be me if I didn't give my small frustration with Earth Day being on April 22nd. Grew up in Nebraska, where April 22nd is a solemn day of Arbor Day, because we started it in Nebraska in the 1800s, and darn it, someone came along and put Earth Day over our Arbor Day. And so happy to celebrate Earth Day, but we could have picked a whole nother day and celebrated Earth and trees. But they're both important. We can still celebrate them both on the same day. So please come on up. We'll take a photo for those who want to be in a photo, and a proclamation. Greatly appreciated. All right, next up we have another proclamation, and this is proclamation Pierce County Council proclaiming April 26, 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Day in Pierce County, Washington. And I believe this will be read by Councilmember Hitchin. Oh, yes, I do. So it'll be read by Councilmember Hitchin, and we will invite to the podium Craig Roberts, Executive Director of the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, Nadia Van Adder, Assistant Director of the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, Green Schneff. Sorry about that. Chief Deputy Attorney with the Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Constance White, Clerk of the Superior Court, and Dominique Hardiman, Manager of the Probation Division with District Court. So please all come up to the podium there, and we will invite Councilmember Hitchin to read this.
Thank you, Chair. A proclamation of the Pierce County Council proclaiming April 26, 2024 as Domestic Violence Awareness Day in Pierce County, Washington. Whereas domestic violence is a pattern of behavior used by an individual to establish and maintain power and control over another. And whereas domestic violence is a pervasive issue that affects individuals and families across Pierce County, Washington, irrespective of age, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or religion. And whereas the impact of domestic violence extends beyond physical harm, encompassing emotional, psychological, and financial consequences, and often resulting in long-lasting trauma for survivors and their loved ones. And whereas the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center is funded and operated jointly by Pierce County and the City of Tacoma and features an easily navigable style of service delivery that brings together partners from the community and from the government, including the Rebuilding Hope Sexual Assault Center, Tacoma Pro Bono, the City of Tacoma Neighborhood and Community Services, Family Support Division, Department of Social and Health Services, JBLM Family Advocacy Program, Multi-Care Mental Health Programs for Children and Families, Kindred Souls, Korean Women's Association, Our Sister's House, and many others. And whereas Pierce County has many organizations that support and are resources to victims of domestic violence, including but not limited to Associated Ministries, the YWCA, Family Renewal Shelter, Tacoma Community House, Greater Lake Mental Health, and the Salvation Army. And whereas the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center year after year has provided no-cost services including victim advocacy, safety planning, electronic filing for temporary protection orders, criminal and civil legal services, housing, emergency assistance, chaplaincy services to victims, supporting survivors, providing real-time support calls on the domestic violence helpline, and providing proactive outreach to victims. And whereas April is nationally recognized as both Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Abuse Prevention Month, and the tireless work of the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center and its partners to marshal resources and provide critical services to the victims of these heinous crimes is immeasurable benefit to our community. And whereas as we work to honor Crystal's memory daily, we take this day in April to recommit ourselves to providing quality service to our community and recognize that stopping domestic violence is everyone's responsibility, and community members needing support can reach the 24-hour National Domestic Violence Hotline at 800-799-7233. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on the 16th day of April 2024 by the Pierce County Council that Saturday, April 26th, 2024 is hereby designated as Domestic Violence Awareness Day in Pierce County, Washington, and we encourage all community members to dedicate themselves to domestic violence prevention and join in this observance. Thank you.
Thank you. We can have a round of applause for that. I will invite you to make a few comments about this proclamation. We have the presentations coming up later in the meeting, but just any comments on the proclamation. And please state your name for the record.
Craig Roberts, Director of the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center. Every year we come together to honor Crystal by declaring April 26th as Domestic Violence Awareness Day, something we try to do every day at the center to honor her memory. So thank you all for your support throughout the year, not just in the month of April. And I'd like to say a special thank you to Councilmember Campbell and Councilmember Hitchin, who are hardworking members of our executive board. So thank you.
I've met you all in life. You're not shy people.
I'd like to say, my name is Nadia Van Adder, Assistant Director at the Family Justice Center, and I just appreciate your guys' support, not just for us, but for all of the agencies in the area that are supporting survivors. We are lucky as a community to have so many different agencies that are pitching in to work to do this work, and I just appreciate you acknowledging that there is a plethora of resources out there, because partnership and collaboration is how we tackle this as a community. So thank you.
Any other comments at this time? All right, then I'll bring it back to the council here for any additional comments. We'll start with Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. When I joined the council in 2021 and was, I guess, assigned or asked for, I don't remember exactly, I ended up on the Crystal Judson board and did a lot of learning, some pretty heavy learning too, about what was going on. And I'd seen the impacts of domestic violence on families from the student perspective and some of the things and complications and issues that it rose and how it negatively impacted their ability to learn and really function. There's so much more to it, and the complexity of the systems that you are able to make simpler, make accessible, provide it in multiple languages if needed, go to them if needed, refer them to additional resources is phenomenal, and it really is that partnership and collaboration. The report we'll hear later today really overviews some of the gaps we're going to start working on over the next couple of years, but the foundation that was built with the formation of the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, the partnership with the prosecutor's office and our service provider and pulling in the clerks now, and I mean just all of this work really, I think, is serving our community better. And I would really like to put you all out of business and end domestic violence, to be honest, but knowing that isn't going to happen anytime soon, it's really important and powerful that you're there and doing that work. So thank you to all of you and to the advocates that work with you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? I also want to give my thanks for the work of so many. And before I do that, I think Councilmember Krueger wants to share something. Councilmember Krueger?
Thank you, Chair. It's just to say thank you for taking the front arrows, because it's such a deep emotional system that you're having to work with and what you see, and I couldn't handle it. And I can't read my other note that I wrote. That, yeah, the thing with domestic violence, it doesn't discriminate on it for anyone. And, you know, hearing about O.J. Simpson, I just made me think of Nicole Brown and what happened to her. And you don't think it happens to, you know, Hollywood people, but it's just rampant and amongst everyone. And just, you know, thank you for taking the front lines there. It's hard to sleep at night as it is, let alone have to know what you know. Thank you for what you do. That was all.
Thank you for that, Councilmember Krueger. Again, I want to thank everyone. If we had all of our partners in the room would be overflowing because there's so many groups in the community. But what we have is some of the all-stars from Pierce County here, where we start with intake and helping people through the system, through the prosecutor's office, the courts, and then even beyond, helping to, in some cases, reunite families, in some cases, make sure that we're creating that safe separation that so that families can recover and thrive again in the future. I've been on the board of the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center for about as long as I can remember now, and every year it's still a learning experience. And I remember, Councilmember Krueger, you brought up O.J. Simpson, and I really do want to honor Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, victims in that. But I remember when he was found innocent that there were women who were staying at Shelter Shore locally who just checked out of the shelter and went back to their abuser because they no longer believed in the system over some, something like that. And it was a big step back in our country in that many people, many victims really felt that would they be able to get justice. And so I think we've worked back from that and to rebuild the trust in the system so that when someone is ready to exit an intimate partner violent situation, we have systems in place that can help you, and that we have systems in place that will help you get the justice that you need. So thanks to great systems like this. So with that, thank you all very much. Let's have you come on up and take a photo. Come on over this way. You got to make room for a few more here. We will go ahead and open them up.
Good. Took a few photos here. All right, 1, 2, 3. Awesome, thank you.
All right, and as I indicated, we have some under other business presentations coming up from many of the people who were just honored with proclamations. But till then, we do have a bit of business to take care of, and that is resolution or proposal number R 2024-149 is before us. Councilmember Hitchin for a motion.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move R 2024-149.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Will the clerk please read the title into the record?
Proposal number R 2024-149, a resolution of the Pierce County Council authorizing the submittal of the Schoolhouse Creek culvert replacement at Mouth Project to the Puget Sound Acquisition and Restoration Large Capital Grant Program for funding assistance to the Recreation and Conservation Office. Thank you.
All right, and we have Mr. Taylor to brief us on this proposal. Mr. Taylor?
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, council members. As the title was read into the record by the clerk, this proposal relates to a grant application. The resolution will authorize the county executive to submit a grant application to the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office. This grant application would support work at the Schoolhouse Creek Culvert Replacement Project, which is on Anderson Island. The specific request would seek $3.9 million of funding over a multi-year period of 2025 through 2029. There's no local match proposed for this request. I will note that the proposal did receive review at your Rules and Operations Committee at its April 8th meeting. It did receive a due pass recommendation. It is before the council today for final consideration. This project is also included in your 6-year surface water improvement program and is consistent with that program. We do have staff from the Planning and Public Works Department present today to help answer questions regarding this proposal, and I'd be happy to do so as well. Thank you.
All right, and we do have Angela Ango from Planning and Public Works available to answer any. Do we have any questions from council members? All right, I think we got most of those answered in the briefing we had earlier, but we will go ahead and do a public hearing on this. This is a public hearing at this time. I'd like to invite members of the public to provide comment on proposal number R 2024-149. If you're here in the room and wish to speak on it, please come up to the podium. Please state your name. We'd like it for the record, and keep your remarks to 3 minutes. Direct all comments to the chair. Not seeing anyone in chambers. Moving up to the podium, I will go ahead and check with online. Mr. Weinsberry.
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment on proposal number R 2024-149, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or star 9 on your telephone keypad. And I see no hands at this time, Vice Chair.
All right, seeing no hands raised on Zoom at this time, we will go ahead and close the public comment and bring it back to the council for any last comments before the vote on this. Seeing none, there we go, Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief. This project is part of a larger project that's been ongoing, both run by our community that lives on Anderson Island and really has been working this land, along with several other nonprofit agencies with no match to this project as far as funding from the county. We've been planning for this. This is an opportunity, so I hope we will have support today. This would be a wonderful way to celebrate Earth Day, to say that we've turned this in, and maybe we'll actually get the funding and it'll be a real celebration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Well, if we do have a celebration, since it is schoolhouse, if we could maybe have a theme song in the style of Schoolhouse Rock. That's what keeps going through my head every time I read this. So a little, that would be good. But we got time. First, we got to get the grant. I want to thank everyone from Planning and Public Works for searching out, finding, and then applying for this grant. Grants are a very important part of how we are able, particularly in Planning and Public Works, to get a lot of good work like this done. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Councilmember Hitchin.
Aye.
Councilmember Morale.
Aye.
Councilmember Cruver.
Aye.
Councilmember Herrera.
Aye.
And Councilmember Campbell.
Aye.
The result of the roll call vote is 5 ayes and 0 nays.
And on a vote of 5-0, the motion, the motion is adopted. And thank you. All right. This brings us to community forum. Community forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on any topic that is of significance to or affecting Pierce County government that did not appear on today's agenda. There's a 3-minute limit. Please state your name if you would like it on the record and address all comments to the chair. I will start with those in the chambers. Is there anyone wishing to make public comment on anything before the council? Please come up to the podium, state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is David Hill, and I'm a resident of the Ording Valley, and I'm part of the SR 162 community group. The SR 162 community group has expanded our focus beyond the 162 corridor to work with all agencies to find solutions to transportation network shortfalls in both East and Central Pierce County. We have the same name but a new logo. Last week, we began the first of a series of mailings to each of you addressing the missing connecting corridor from East to West Pierce County. We also provided our proposal to designate the existing 128th Street as that corridor by connecting from where it ends at Ording Valley at 162 up to Reservoir Road, which connects with 128th Street on South Hill. This would complete that missing connection of the county's east and west transportation networks and could create the first multimodal cross-county east-west corridor. As you can see from the map in the back of your handout, this is a proposal. This proposal is the only east-west corridor connection to the Bonnie Lake Plateau, which is the home of the largest residential development in the state, Tahali. In fact, SR 410 is the only east-west corridor serving this area. Also notice how this proposed corridor crosses central Pierce County in a less congested area and also provides for the redundancy to 112th and SR 512. In the second map, you see a portion of the portion of 128th Street East that must be completed to make this cross-county east-west connection. This is because the 5-lane county highway connecting the Bonnie Lake Transportation Network to 128th Street ends at SR 162 in the Ording Valley. Continuation of 128th Street would scale an undeveloped forested hillside without displacing any homes and without interruption to the east-west travel during construction. The urgency of this proposal is driven by the aforementioned 2027 completion of the new Rhodes Lake Road Highway from Tahali to SR 162. A projected 30,000 vehicles per day will be using this corridor, 17,000 of which will be moving east and west. That means without our proposal, the only means of moving that east-west traffic is by diverting it onto SR 162 to Military Road, which is not an east-west corridor and not suitable for volumes of traffic. In closing, I hope this clarifies the need, offers a solution, and identifies the importance that this proposal be included in the transportation element of the soon-to-be updated comprehensive plan. So thank you for your time today, and we'll be here to answer any questions if you need us.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the room wishing to make comment? All right, seeing none, I will go ahead and close public comment here in the room and go ahead and take it online. Mr. Weinsberry.
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or star 9 on your telephone keypad. And I see no hands at this time, Vice Chair.
All right, not seeing any hands online raised. We will go ahead and close the public comment online, bring it back, and close the community forum. I do want to, normally we don't respond much with public comment, but I do want to thank you for all your advocacy over the years on the State Route 162. I've seen you at several community meetings out sharing your points of view, and so thank you for coming down, sharing with us, and leaving us a little something to take home. Thank you. All right, that brings us on to our next other business and announcements. And this is domestic violence services in Pierce County. We're going to have a little presentation on that. I don't know, do we have anyone introducing this for? I think we'll just go ahead and let the individuals come up and introduce themselves and a little presentation on the work that they do. We have first up Nadia Van Adder from the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, followed by Corrine Schneff, Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Constance White, and Dominique Hardiman with the District Court. So please come on up. I know we have several presentations on the good work that we're doing. And Craig, you can come up also.
Thank you.
And again, please do introduce yourself for the record and tell us a little bit about what it is that you do.
Well, good afternoon again. I'm Craig Roberts, Director of the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center. And with me today is
Nadia Van Adder, the Assistant Director at the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center.
We're going to try and whip through this as quickly as we can. We're on a kind of a tight timeline. Next slide, please. Just wanted to point out that partnerships and collaboration are basically the foundation of what we do. So with that, we'll, in your next slide, please. In your presentation today, there are some statistics and things that we won't go over, but you'll be able to take a look at them in your own time.
Microphone's having a little bit of a hard time picking you up there, so.
We wanted to be able to focus the presentation talking more about the services that our team provides and what we do, but like Craig said, we wanted to be able to give a snapshot so you can see what our team has been up to in 2023. And I would like to point out that we do this with a pretty small team. We've got 7 community-based advocates and 1 law enforcement advocate that are meeting with survivors, taking calls, and that type of thing. So, next slide, please.
And I would also like to take the time right now to say, even though we're buzzing through this at light speed, you're all more than welcome to come down and take a tour of the center and learn more about our services. And we're kind of proud of it.
To be clear, Mr. Vedder has to give his presentation after 5 o'clock, not at 5. So
Okay.
you can
And then for this, we also just wanted to do a really quick snapshot to show who we're serving in the community. The majority of the survivors that do access care identify as female, but our services are for any survivors of intimate partner violence, regardless of that. Next slide, please. So domestic violence is about power and control, and there's so many different tactics that abusers use to maintain that control. And so we really kept that in mind with the idea when we developed our programs, and we have 8 programs that are designed with the power and control wheel in mind, with the idea of disrupting those different spokes. The work we do through having 7 on-site community partners that are listed up there. We have DCS, which is Department of Child Support, DSHS, which handles things like state benefits and state assistance, Korean Women's Association, Our Sister's House, Superior Court, Pierce County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, and the Pierce County Sheriff's Department. This work is done with over 45 professionals that are co-located at the agency and over 30 off-site community partners. No one agency can do it all, and so we really want to lean into collaboration and partnership with other agencies, even if they're not located with us. All of our services are free. Everything that's housed on our community side is confidential, and we really pride ourselves in holding to a high level of confidentiality and professionalism.
So now we'll talk a little bit about our programs. Our first program that we'll talk about is our community advocacy program. Can you hear me okay? Better?
It's a little bit hard. Thank you.
It's their opportunity to come in and talk to a confidential community-based advocate about safety planning, about options, about resources in the community. We also, under this program, have our Friends and Family program, whereas if you're concerned about a relationship that your daughter's in or your mom, you can come in and actually talk to an advocate about ways that you can help to support that person.
Our next program up there is our legal aid program, and this is 2-pronged. All of our advocates are cross-trained in filing domestic violence protection orders. And that was really intentional with the idea that if someone comes in to access care and sits down and talks with me, and then they identify that they want an order, I can walk them through that process instead of handing them off to another team member. And so the advocates are talking about how that protection order fits into a safety plan and guiding clients through the process of filing it. The other prong of that program is we partner with Tacoma Pro Bono. And if someone comes in and needs family law or other legal support, we can do direct referrals to their family safety project team. We also strongly connect in with Northwest Justice Project for additional legal support and Northwest Immigrants' Rights Project for additional legal support.
Another program is criminal justice services. So on site, we have the prosecuting attorney's domestic violence unit, both misdemeanor, felony, and human trafficking, as well as the sheriff's department's domestic violence unit. So this allows them to work very closely on cases that they're prosecuting together. And a prosecutor can go to a detective to a prosecutor, and just say, hey, I need a little bit more information here, or can you follow up? This said the neighbor witnessed this incident. Can you go back and talk to the neighbor? We also receive direct referrals from both agencies. If they're working with a victim in a case and they feel that they need more help, they can just hook them right directly to a community-based advocate where there is confidentiality.
The next program we have is our survivor well-being, and this is really looking at what do the next steps look like for survivors. And so this program includes spiritual support. We have very wonderful volunteer chaplains that are there to provide that. We have a couple of different support groups that we're currently running virtually. We have our Voices Committee, which is a group of survivors that meets monthly to help provide feedback on services and help inform our programming. And then we also offer an art circle and have an artist in residence. If we don't have the program, we look at connecting folks into other resources. So if our support group isn't a right fit date or time-wise, we connect into community partners to find one that is or help connect into counseling.
Our financial services program brings in outside agencies like Department of Child Support and DSHS who can work with clients to help provide them with financial resources. Also, our advocates are well-trained in helping our clients seek crime victim compensation. I'm sorry, it just slipped from my head.
Our outreach program includes a couple different pieces. One, we're out there presenting in the community when it's requested and getting to do tabling events. And this one has been exciting because that was really put on hold because of COVID. But now that things are up and going, we're getting a chance to be out in the community much more. But a really big portion of our outreach is doing police report and prosecution outreach. We receive domestic violence police reports for most of the law enforcement jurisdictions in Pierce County, and we screen them with the idea of the power and control wheel and a risk assessment in mind. And then we cold call out to the listed victim on that report. They reached out for help for a reason, and so that's why we want to connect in, is we're calling just to say, you know, are you okay? What does help look like for you? Are there resources we can help connect you with? For the prosecution piece, if the prosecutor's office has someone and they are working a case, they will hand that off to our team where we can do some outreach to talk about resources, safety planning, and additional support. And one of the newer pieces to our outreach is non-fatal strangulation exams. So if a survivor is strangled and they go get a non-fatal strangulation exam from a hospital, which is similar to a sexual assault exam, those forensic nurses send those over to us, and we call out to those individuals to see what additional support that they need.
Our domestic violence helpline, that is one of our programs that has really evolved in the last 3 years since COVID. When we went out of the office during COVID, we used that as basically the island that people could just call, get help. It used to, pre-COVID, the helpline was used as, you know, okay, you called, you found us, come on in, we'll help you get services. And I still believe that face-to-face is a better service, but if we can get you what you need over the phone, then we're going to do that too. And so if transportation is an issue, we can take care of you over the phone.
And then our final program is our emergency support services. And this is all of these emergency stopgap things that regular funding doesn't cover. So we try to always have emergency food on site, groceries that we can send home with clients, menstrual products, diapers, wipes, toiletries. At Christmas time, we have a winter shop. Thank you all very much because you guys donate to that. But these are those things that can be a huge challenge for survivors, but may seem like really basic items for the rest of us. And we are really lucky to have such wonderful community support and small grants that allow us to provide those things on a consistent basis. Something I forgot to mention at the beginning is, on average, most clients engage in 3 different programs the first time that they visit, but they don't know that, which is exactly what we want. We want it to be as seamless as possible, that they know they're coming in to talk to someone and getting support they need, but not necessarily thinking about, you know, different agencies or programs that they're having to connect with.
So finally, just want to tell you a little bit about how we measure our work, because if we didn't do that, we wouldn't know how we were doing. So we do have a client questionnaire that we give at the end of their service or their time at the center, if they're willing to do that. And we measure several things, whether or not they're feeling better able to handle their situation, small print, or whether they report knowing more about domestic violence, or if they report that they have improved knowledge of safety planning, or they report increased knowledge of community resources and how to connect to services in the future. So we're not only trying to provide them with the best services, but we want to make sure that they really are and they're getting something out of it. So thank you, and do you have any questions for us?
Thank you very much for that. I think we have 1 or 2 quick questions here. Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I shouldn't have this question, but I honestly, when I saw the stats in this beautiful purple slide, there was a stat that caught me off guard that I wasn't aware of. So the age range of those that are coming into your office are between 25 and 54. It's 84% of the cases.
Yes.
I would maybe not today, but I would really love to kind of dig into that a little bit and really look at, is it more leaning towards the 20s or more leaning towards the 30s or the 40s? Or like, is there anything, it's just a huge range to say 85 or 84%. So, and then also the connection between poverty and domestic violence. I can think of lots of reasons why, but I think this data really shows that's something that there are some connections. So thinking about some of the programs, so not a question, more a statement, and maybe future Crystal Judson board topic. So.
We can definitely pull those apart. We've got them listed this way just because of how we report on grants, but that is a very large range.
Thank you.
All right. Any other additional questions? Well, thank you very much, and I hope you'll hang tight for our presentation that we have from our performance audit. Next up, we have Corrine Schneff from Prosecuting Attorney's Office with a little bit on what Prosecuting Attorney's Office is doing. There is a button to your right a little bit that can lower the podium if you so need.
I might be a little bit short, a little bit. My name is Corrine Schneff. I am the current criminal chief for the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office. I've been a prosecutor for over 17 years, and I've spent the last 5 years here. The majority of my career has been focused on gender-based violence crimes, and the last 5 years I've spent before my current position, as the supervisor for the Domestic Violence and Human Trafficking Unit at the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office. And I just want to give you a little bit of an oversight into what we're seeing on a daily basis and how victims make it through the criminal justice system. I did provide a 2-page handout for you that just contains some numbers and a quote from our Constitution. A typical Monday morning at the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office will see between 10 to 15 in custody cases that we look to charge for incidents of domestic violence, both for misdemeanor and felonies. The rest of the week we're looking at 5 to 8 a day. When there's a family holiday, it usually means all hands on deck. We need to make sure to have everybody there the next day because we know that there is going to be an increase in the number of domestic violence visits or the domestic violence cases. The numbers continue to grow, and that's why the first page of that handout shows that domestic violence is not stopping here in Pierce County. It continues to grow. This is only the felony referrals. This does not contain the misdemeanor referrals, but you'll see on that bottom section the number that we're seeing here in Pierce County. Pierce County Prosecutor's Office takes domestic violence very seriously and has continued to expand the resources that our office devotes to the domestic violence unit because we see the need for that in the cases that we're seeing in terms of the level of significance, complication, and just volume of cases. This last year, I tried 2 aggravated murder cases that were domestic violence related. Both of those individuals had multiple contacts with the criminal justice system and law enforcement before they were eventually stalked and murdered by their abuser. So this work, it means a lot to me. It's important for us to try and have that break, to try and separate abusers from victims and to hold offenders accountable. And I know we look at numbers a lot, and that's important because it informs resources, but we should not lose sight of the fact that each of those numbers represents an individual person, and that person has experienced trauma that is going to impact their life. And some of that trauma is quite extensive, and we should care about that work because of the impact that it has on the community. In order to effectively work against this issue, and we must understand the full scope of it, we must recognize that it exists, right? This happens behind closed doors, and it's easy to look past it. The ability of our community to effectively address the issues of domestic violence requires us to work together, and that is why the Family Justice Center is so important. And I appreciate the council's support. Over the years, I've seen it with Councilmember Campbell and Councilmember Hitchin and the council as a whole in terms of providing that support, that co-location. When you look at a domestic violence case from its infancy, frequently they start in the middle of the night, right? Domestic violence goes unreported, and at the point in time where a victim finally feels like they can report, it's usually in the middle of trauma, it's usually in the middle of chaos, and many times the victim doesn't know if she's going to make it out that night, and so she calls 911. And law enforcement is the first line that comes in to help the victim. They do witness interviews, collect evidence, and then pass the case on to our office. We usually see it the next morning, where our prosecutors diligently look through police reports and work with our advocates. We have system-based advocates that work for the Pierce County Prosecutor's Office. They work hand in hand with the community-based advocates at the Family Justice Center and with law enforcement that's also co-located on site. The system-based advocates are able to help the victims navigate the system, connect with the community-based advocates, and work through the criminal justice process. They offer information, resources, and guidance to victims of domestic violence every day. When a case is charged, these advocates reach out to the victims to let them know what the status of their case is and also to let them know about their rights as victims. We do have a constitution that specifically addresses rights of victims, and I think a lot of times in the criminal justice system, the focus is on the defendant and the defendant's rights. And this can be very frustrating to victims of crimes as they see that process work. But we shouldn't forget that our community has not eliminated rights for victims. And in fact, our Constitution, and I just provided just a quick quote from that, Article 1, Section 35, effective law enforcement depends on cooperation from victims of crime to ensure victims a meaningful role in the criminal justice system and to accord them due dignity and respect. Victims of crime are hereby granted the following basic and fundamental rights. And it goes on to talk about some of those rights. One of those rights is the right to speak at a hearing, at a release hearing. Anytime a defendant has a hearing where they're going to consider releasing him or consider bail, they have a right to speak. That can be very intimidating for a victim who has just experienced trauma the night before. And now here is their one and only opportunity to stand before the court with their abuser right in the room and have that opportunity to address the court. And so it's very important for our advocates to be able to help the victim walk through that process so that they can effectively exercise their right to have their voices heard in the criminal justice system. And they also have a right to be heard at sentencing as well. Our advocates and our prosecutors, our legal assistants, we work together to work with the victim throughout this process. It's a very, very difficult process for victims to go through. They have follow-up interviews with law enforcement, interviews with prosecutors, interviews with defense attorneys. All of these can result in further trauma as they have to relive not just the one traumatic incident, but frequently years of abuse that they have gone through, and they have to face that scrutiny which comes with the criminal justice system, which comes with having to testify in court if the case goes to trial. I have had the obligation to put many victims on the stand, many domestic violence victims on the stand in trial so that I can prove my case, and I can tell you how difficult it is to watch these victims have to relive their trauma. Some of them, you can see, are actively reliving the trauma in their heads as they act out with their hands and body during describing the incidents, what has occurred to them. Despite this trying time for victims, we do what we can at the prosecutor's office, law enforcement, and the Family Justice Center as a whole to provide resources to victims and to hold offenders accountable. And I just want to thank you again for your support today.
Thank you. Let me see if there's any quick questions for you before you get away there. And I don't see any. I do want to, the data that you gave us for those who might be following along at home shows domestic violence going from in 2017 to pretty much steadily increasing up to from in 2017 986 to in 2023 1,593, just under 1,600. And these are charged cases, right?
These are referrals from law enforcement, and it's only felony. And we don't have them separated out, but you can also see that the rates of murder have also significantly increased, and many of those murders are domestic violence murders as well.
Yes, and we also know that, at least with the referrals, that it's kind of a tip of the iceberg, that there's a lot more happening, a lot more that doesn't get a felony referral, and hopefully, sometimes we can intercede before it gets to a felony point, because that means something very traumatic and serious has happened. And so many of our organizations work upstream to make sure that we don't get it landing on your desk. So thank you to all the groups that help work on that. Thank you. Next up, we have Constance White, Clerk of the Superior Court.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. I wanted to thank you for allowing me to be here. You can go on to the next slide. What I'm here to kind of talk about today is what is something that is innovative and a new initiative within the clerk's office is developing what we call a domestic violence navigator program. This is just a part of everything that I've observed while being the clerk and what is happening in our domestic violence unit. So our goal is to establish a program that will provide education, be a warm handoff to the advocates and the organizations that handle and provide long-term and short-term services to our vulnerable population. So these are not individuals that have law degrees. What we're doing is partnering with community organizations, also with the University of Washington at Tacoma, with their students that are in their College of Social Work and Criminal Justice. We're partnering with them to establish practicum hours, so they will be coming into our space to help individuals work through a 17-page petition as far as understanding what that means. Next slide, please. As I said, with this domestic violence navigator program, this is just a piece of this very complex puzzle. The other ones are sitting right here with us, and we're wanting to add to the knowledge that our public needs and our community needs. We know that there's a demand for services. It's always greater than the available funding. This is one of the benefits of establishing this navigator program with the University of Washington at Tacoma, because there's no cost for us for that. What we are providing is support, emotional support for these individuals that are filling out these petitions. Some of them come in alone. They don't know what to do first. They don't know where they're supposed to go. These individuals will help us to do that. They are also where they don't know where to go sometimes. So part of this is coming from the research that was done with the Battered Women's Justice Project. There's recommendations that came from that. This is how this initiative started. Next slide, please. These are some of the program objectives. I've done some research with the non-lawyer navigators in state courts. This has given me a nice outline of the progress and how we can make this happen for our community, which is enhancing. These are the program objectives that I will also adopt, which is enhancing court effectiveness, facilitating access to justice for self-represented litigants, and providing a positive and rich experience for navigators. This program that I'm putting together it's a win-win-win-win. So this is going to allow students to get real life experience. This is going to allow our community to feel and establish a level of public trust within this building, because right now we don't have those services that are available to everyone in the county city building unless we have the organizations to come into here, which is the plan. We have an office down in the clerk's area that we will be utilizing we're going to follow the District Court Resource Center's calendar, where we have individuals community organizations that will sign up. So they will be coming in different days, different organizations that provide various services. So this is going to be sometimes that first stop where individuals that are unsure where to go, they will have a community organization that is there for them in the county city building that may be able to provide services for them, but if they are not, then they too will be a warm handoff to an organization that can provide the services that they are needing. And with this, our staff is becoming more informed of the community organizations that are out there so that they can be better informed in order to direct those individuals to the organizations that the individuals need support from. Next slide, please. Right now, these are some of the community stakeholders that we have that have agreed to come into the clerk's office and work. This was done before, and Crystal Judson Family Justice Center has now advocates that come in on Tuesdays. Right now, we also have Mi Centro that comes in, and our sister's house is coming in starting next month. And these are our justice stakeholders that we continue to talk with and have different support with. And our potential community, our potential partners are various community organizations. I've talked with the Administrative Office of the Courts. They are very excited at the prospect of us being able to bring some of these organizations within the county city building. Next slide, please. I decided to add some of these statistics just so that you can kind of see what the clerk's office is dealing with on a regular basis. The last column with our remote and in-person filings, we opted to do that due to the law change where individuals can file a petition 24 hours a day. They can use it on their phone. So we wanted to be able to track some of those. So when we come in the mornings, when we leave at 4:30, there are petitions that are being filed throughout the night. So as soon as we come into our office, we are tasked with reviewing those. And as you can see, in the month of January, we were averaging 17 a day. I pulled the stats just the other day. We're now averaging 18 civil protection orders that are being filed a day. So this will be an opportunity for us to educate the community and be that warm handoff to those individuals, sometimes even being a barrier. I have personally sat in a courtroom with a young lady because her perpetrator was sitting right next in the next aisle, and she was just shaking to go in there. So sometimes having a warm body to kind of separate those situations is very important to individuals. I think sometimes it will also allow them a sense of comfort. And so that's the goal for some of the navigators that will be coming into our space. In addition to, if you can go to the next slide, please. In addition to helping us with our department priorities, which are to continue to establish community or partnerships with different organizations. We are wanting to have written processes and protocols to assist the individuals that are coming in. We will be creating short videos with Tacoma Pro Bono for individuals that are coming into the courthouse, what to expect when they walk in. Maybe with those videos, it will give them some sort of peace and comfort as they're walking in. Walking in here and immediately walking through security is very scary for people. But if they also know where they need to go when they come in here, then they can go straight to where they're supposed to be and have a sense of comfort of where they need to go and how they need to take care of their business. The final piece of this is going to be us developing presentations for us to take within the community. Our goal now is to run statistics based on zip codes. When I presented to the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, Councilmember Rumbaugh asked about the stats on the different locations in different districts and regions. So we're working on that. And what we're going to do is once we put these educational pieces together, we will be targeting those particular communities so that those individuals will understand what to expect when if heaven forbid they have to, but if they have to come in to file a civil protection order, they will know what that process looks like ahead of time, what type of documents that they need to bring with them, what type of a statement that they need to make. That way they will be better prepared when they come in, because what we want to do is make sure that if this is their first stop, we don't know what it took for them to come to the courthouse that particular day, but we want to make sure that they get all of the information that they need at that time. So those are our goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Any quick questions? Councilmember Hitchin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering, Ms. White, have you had a chance to talk about your space needs as far as partnering with the different agencies when we're thinking about the redesign of what we're doing here in the county city building?
We've had small conversations about that. We do have one office space that will be available for us after all the movement goes on. And that's why we're trying to set up just a calendar, because we only have the one space. But I'm hopeful that we can continue to get the support that we need in order to provide additional space for multiple organizations within the building itself.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a valuable conversation to have, both with the court's work, the District Court Resource Center, and the clerk's office, to see how we can help people who are experiencing trauma just coming into our building and be served a little bit better. So I think it's something to think about with this redesign. It's one of those opportunities that's before us, and if we are forward thinking, then we can make good things happen. So thank you for being here and the work.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the question. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
And next we have up Dominique Hardiman from District Court.
Thank you for having me present again today. Dominic Hardiman, District Court Probation Manager. I want to start by first talking about what we offer in District Court. The probation officers, we have 4 officers that specialize in working with defendants that have domestic violence cases. So these are highly trained officers. I've done probation for about 25 years. DV caseloads are the most difficult caseloads to supervise. It's a high risk, high need population, and I say that because I've supervised sex offender caseloads, DUI caseloads. Hands down, DV caseloads are the most difficult, very trying, very testing. It's not a caseload that we place new officers on at all. You've got to get some years under your belt to be able to manage that caseload. The officers that are in that caseload have extensive backgrounds. 2 of them are former therapists, just to give you an idea of how difficult that caseload can be. Those officers are tasked with identifying the risks those defendants pose and trying to mitigate that risk, whether it's employment, getting them employment, helping them find employment, educational deficits, addressing that, or addressing substance abuse issues. Those are all things that contribute to domestic violence batterers. These officers also assist victims. We're usually, I shouldn't say usually, but quite often, we're the first phone call that victim will make when there's something going on. The individual is driving by the victim's home, calling. Quite often, victims will contact the probation officers for assistance before they will call 911, and officers are tasked with addressing those needs. So quite frequently, we have contact with victims, including victims coming to the probation office looking for assistance, and we've worked closely with the Crystal Justice Center, where we've walked the victims down to the Crystal Justice Center. They frequently can come in with the perpetrator, and we walk them out the back door without the perpetrator even knowing what's going on. And so that's something that we've worked out for quite a few years. So those are the services that the probation officers provide. Most recently, we've been offering domestic violence MRT, moral recognition training or therapy. This has something that's been implemented across the state. It is a 26-week curriculum. MRT is the foundation of the program. MRT has been around for years. It's been used by correctional agencies throughout the country for a number of years. It's an effective program. It's been utilized by our Superior Court in their therapeutic programs for a number of years because it's an effective program. MRT is the foundation of our DV MRT program. We've been running that for about 1.5 years, and we are keeping statistics on how effective that program is. One of the things I can tell you right now, we have much more participation in our DV MRT program than we did when we referred individuals out to domestic violence treatment. Domestic violence treatment is a good program, but we often run into the problem of individuals not being able to afford the program. So now we have a perpetrator who's been sentenced to complete a domestic violence treatment assessment, which can be upwards $400 to $800 for the assessment, and then it's $50 a session. And again, we're dealing with a population that is frequently low income. So being able to afford that assessment in that program has just not been realistic. And we've had to send a lot of individuals back to court based on the fact that they cannot comply with that condition because of their finances. With our DVMRT program, we have staff that have been trained in this program, and we are eliminating those barriers. So individuals can opt into this program, and they can pay for the program, which is $125. They can pay for the program through participation in our work crew. So participation in our work crew will pay for your enrollment in the program. The only financial component left is the $25 workbook. That's your skin in the game. Again, the program is 26 weeks. The officers that run this program are trained in this program. This provides another level of accountability that I really appreciate, because quite often when you refer someone to a domestic violence treatment program, you're waiting to hear back on the progress of that individual through a progress report. With our DVMRT program, it's immediate. It's the officers communicating with the supervising officers. So if there are any issues, any excuses, there's an immediate response to that behavior. And that's the most effective way to address behavior, is to address it immediately. So this places us in a really great position to address this domestic violence issue. So again, it's a 26-week program. Most of the participants are not going to complete the program in 26 weeks because it is intensive, and you are held accountable by your peers, which is another component of that program that I really like. It's your peers that are holding you accountable. So each person enters the program at a different module. There's 26 modules, and you have individuals opting in and working on different modules. I may enter that module, come in at module number 1. I may be in the same group with an individual that's been there for 20 weeks, and he's had to work his butt off to get to that 20th week. You can believe that that guy that's at the 20th week is not going to let the guy that's at week 1 slide. He's going to hold him accountable. If you are not complying with the requirements of the program, you're going to be called out on that, and you're going to have to repeat that module. That's what I like about the program. It's the individuals holding themselves accountable for their participation in the program. So 2-hour program for 26 weeks. Again, this is a really great opportunity for us to address those barriers with these individuals, not having any excuses. That financial situation has been a barrier, so now we've had the opportunity to eliminate that. Also, I've had the opportunity, through Bill, connected me with Sanjata Warrior back in June, who works with the Battered Women's Justice Project, and I'm now sitting on a committee, been working with this committee since June on developing a curriculum, nationwide curriculum to train officers and working with domestic violence perpetrators and assisting victims. So there really isn't anything on a nationwide level where there is a curriculum to assist officers in training and working with domestic violence perpetrators. Again, this is a difficult population to work with, and there really isn't any standard. And so thanks to Bill, I've had the opportunity to work on this curriculum. We've had a number of meetings throughout the year, and we continue to work on building that curriculum. Again, I want to thank you all for having me here today and presenting, and I am free to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Look to see if there's any questions. Not seen any come up, so very thorough presentation. And thank you for taking time to come out and share with us.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have a presentation on performance audit report, evaluation of Pierce County's approach to gender-based violence services. And this is Bill Vetter, our Senior Policy Counsel Office. I know some of my colleagues need to get going for other scheduled events this evening. So we appreciate you being here, Mr. Vetter. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the council. By charter, the County Council administers a performance audit program through its Performance Audit Committee designed to improve the economy, efficiency, and effectiveness of county government. The charter directs that the results of each of these reports must be presented in an evening public meeting within 90 days of completion. As you've heard today, the county supports domestic violence primarily through the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, which coordinates with the sheriff and prosecutor, as well as through partnerships with organizations in the community. In 1994, the county established the Pierce County Commission Against Domestic Violence, which included government and community representatives and was tasked with developing and implementing a comprehensive domestic violence plan for the county. The coalition has not had consistent support since the development of the Family Justice Center. In 2023, the Performance Audit Committee contracted with the Battered Women's Justice Project, which I'll refer to as BWJP, a national legal resource for gender-based violence, to conduct a study of Pierce County's support for gender-based violence services, which I'll talk about the report right now. Next slide, please. BWJP is a national nonprofit leader in gender-based violence policy. Yes.
I don't think we've got the slide deck up.
Oh.
Let's give us just one moment.
Okay.
All right.
We should be on slide 2, or yeah, 2. Thank you. Is a national nonprofit leader in gender-based violence policy and is organized as a collection of national policy and practice centers, providing support, education, best practice, and innovation to advocates, systems professionals, community leaders, and policy experts. Next slide, please. BWJP and Pierce County work together to assess the current coordination of responses to survivors of gender-based violence in the county. The main goal of the project was to scan the present systems of response, identify the needs of an effective trauma-informed system, and propose implementable recommendations. The resulting report was to evaluate and make recommendations regarding the effective delivery of services for domestic violence, sexual assault, gender-based violence, missing and murdered Indigenous women and people, and sex trafficking. The recommendations were to reflect requirements for a comprehensive countywide systemic approach, including the legal and judicial system. It was to review the current system, identify needs for an effective trauma-informed system, and propose organizational models to deliver services and support victims with efficiency and responsiveness. Next slide, please. During the project, BWJP and county staff scanned documents to obtain an overview of the landscape, including work done by domestic and sexual violence coalitions, the U.S. Census, healthcare documents, and previous reports on the state of services. Worked with county staff and the Pierce County Commission Against Domestic Violence to identify systems professionals as well as service providers. Conducted interviews with various service providers, community-based organizations, legal services staff, and others, and attended a 3-day conference titled Breaking Barriers, organized and supported by the county, sponsored by the county, the City of Tacoma, East Centro, the Puyallup Tribe of Indians, and several other entities, as well as conducting listening sessions with survivors and mapping the flows between the systems and survivors to identify gaps in the system's response to both domestic and sexual violence. Next slide, please. Interviewees included victim assistance agencies such as the YWCA, Crystal Judson, Our Sister's House, and others. Criminal and civil systems, all of our internal county departments that deal with this issue. Legal service providers such as the Northwest Immigrant Rights Project, and Northwest Justice Project, and Tacoma Pro Bono, and others including Catherine's Place, Voices Survivors, and Advantage Plus Counseling. Next slide, please. So just to give some background data to illustrate what the report was trying to address and what the county is trying to address. In Pierce County, there's 20.5 DV crimes reported per 1,000 people, and this was in 2021. In Washington, Pierce County has the highest number of DV offenses reported per 1,000 people. DV made up 47.8% of all crimes against persons in Pierce County, and 72% of the victims were female, and 76% of offenders were male. Next slide, please. There were 680 sex crimes reported in Pierce County in 2022. As alluded to earlier, only about 25 to 30% of victims of sexual violence report to law enforcement. And there are 25,000 individuals convicted of sex offenses and kidnapping living in Pierce County. Next slide, please. Pierce County is one of the 3 areas of the United States with the highest incidence of sex trafficking. Next slide, please. there's a higher rate of people with disabilities in Pierce County than in the average in Washington State, and they're only organizations providing advocacy for survivors with disabilities include the Regional Service Centers for the Deaf, which includes the Deaf Blind Service Center and Hearing and Speech Deaf Center, and the Abused Deaf Women's Advocacy Services. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Okay. So in terms of missing and murdered Indigenous women, Tacoma rates 7th in the nation for missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Mr. Vetter.
Yes.
Just make sure the microphone's in front of you.
Yes, sorry. Lost my place there. And as of May 2023, there are 20 missing Indigenous people in Pierce County. Next slide, please. So moving to the findings of the report, there are many organizations that try to address the issues reflected in these statistics. Aside from the support provided to the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, the county supports the YWCA, which provides comprehensive services to survivors and their children. There are also community-based organizations such as Me Centro, Catherine's Place, and Our Sister's House that assist survivors of gender-based violence and sexual violence through their broader programs. Some do not receive any county or city funding, and note that the survivors they serve generally do not report to law enforcement. Additionally, the Puyallup Tribe of Indians Community Domestic Violence Advocacy Program provides comprehensive assistance and support to anyone over the age of 18 experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, or any kind of human trafficking who is a tribal member or spouse. Law enforcement and service providers in Pierce County consistently refer victims of sexual violence and sex trafficking to the community-based agency Rebuilding Hope Sexual Center for Pierce County, which has been a provider of social and legal services, including mental health services and support for survivors and their families. In addition to addressing the immediate needs of those affected by sexual violence, Rebuilding Hope engages in prevention and advocacy efforts. The agency struggles to meet the demand for their services since it is the only Washington State accredited sexual assault program in the county. Emergency, short and long-term safe housing continues to be the #1 need identified by service providers and by system actors. Although many of the organizations aiding survivors in Pierce County have been in existence for a long time and know each other's programs, they all indicated a need for a structure to meet and improve coordination, avoid duplication, and ensure access for all survivors. Next slide, please. In terms of civil legal aid, although there are several ongoing formal and informal partnerships between advocates and legal service providers, the demand for free civil legal assistance surpasses the capacity currently in place. There's a consensus among providers that access to legal advocacy and representation are crucial during every step of the process towards securing safety, housing, and employment stability, dissolution of marriage, custody, and financial support, and access to immigration protections. As reported to BWJP in the course of the study, there are several misconceptions about the current civil legal aid services in Pierce County. Existing civil legal aid providers work closely with Crystal Judson Family Justice Center, but Crystal Judson does not provide the civil legal aid directly. Non-lawyer legal advocates express frustration with their limited role in training, and the court expects them to assist survivors, but they are unsure of how far they can go without providing legal advice, and neither the county nor the city of Tacoma funds civil legal aid. Next slide, please. In terms of the court-based systems response, BWJP staff interviewed prosecutors from both the city of Tacoma and Pierce County, law enforcement officers from Pierce County, probation officers, judicial officers, victim witness advocates, and protection order center staff, and observed court processes. Many of the system professionals echoed frustrations like those identified by service providers. Communication between professionals, advocates, and victims is easier at Crystal Judson since they are co-located physically, and it is also easy for survivors to connect to advocates at Crystal Judson. The guidance advocates provide to the victims on how systems operates allows some level of comfort to systems professionals, but for the professionals who are not located at Crystal Judson, it's harder to obtain information as to whether the victim contacted a service provider and the status of their cases. There's no structured feedback loop between victim service providers and government professionals. From observations of court proceedings, the consultants noted that many pro se litigants are not clear on court processes, the significance of various orders, or legal terminology. And this creates challenges for judicial officers who have to take time to explain the process and may not be able to issue the requested order because the petition does not meet the requirements of the law. Systems professionals were also not clear as to the existence of all the spaces where professionals might connect with service providers to discuss challenges and concerns and develop solutions. Next slide, please. In terms of law enforcement, victims and advocates rely on law enforcement, which has been the main responding agency nationally for decades. Since they are the first to respond in many situations, it's critical that law enforcement works in close collaboration with advocates and the community. BWJP were unable to interview all local police departments, although they did have an interview with a detective from Tacoma PD and were able to meet, obviously, with the Sheriff's Department at Crystal Judson, and were provided with clear guidance on the ways in which the department worked with others at Crystal Judson. However, from conversations with survivors, providers, and other system actors, BWJP was able to ascertain that Tacoma PD's DV unit is critical, but the agency has been unable to maintain consistency in staffing. Service providers and other system actors state that the police department is asserting a shortage of personnel and high turnover. Generally speaking, there's delayed response or no response in remote areas. There's limited law enforcement training on gender-based violence and trauma-informed matters. There is inconsistent training and procedures to serve and enforce protective orders, and there are inconsistent approaches while responding to limited English proficiency in immigrant victims, and there's a need for law enforcement-based victim advocates in all police departments. Next slide, please. BWJP met with several survivors and listened to their perceptions of how both advocacy service and legal systems responded to their needs. The survivors were clear on what worked for them and what was challenging. The domestic violence survivors were satisfied with the service received from the Crystal Judson Family Justice Center and the connections provided by the advocates. Overall, the consistent themes from survivors and advocates for law enforcement response were long delays, lack of explanation of processes, not understanding victim realities and safety concerns, and not making interpreters available when needed. Next slide. So based on these findings, the following recommendations that they reported out are aimed at addressing gaps in the current system. The first one, which you've heard the clerk talk about a little bit already, is an advocate coordinator at the courts. And they noted that it would benefit all players within the system to hire a full-time bilingual bicultural advocate to be present at the courthouse to assist petitioners applying for protection orders. The advocate should be available for all petitioners who are completing forms, and the report itself goes into more detail about specifically what the advocate would be doing. Next is access to civil legal aid. Access to low-cost or no-cost civil legal assistance continues to be a pressing need in the county. According to attorneys and advocates from the organizations, a substantial number of survivors seeking a protective order do so without representation. And nonprofit organizations in the county struggle to meet the demand for these services. Not one organization can do this all on its own, and so the county should look at current collaborative programs working to close the gap. An off-cited issue also from all service providers was the lack of enough pro bono attorneys who can aid by providing needed additional legal assistance. And mobile advocacy. Pierce County's diverse landscape presents critical barriers to access for survivors residing in remote areas. Providers and responders recognize this predicament, but the demand for resources in Tacoma is such that those in remote areas must come to Tacoma for services. So to address this gap, the county could consider supporting existing models of outreach and assistance that entail bringing advocacy and legal support to survivors' doors. Following the example of the healthcare community, providers could come together and implement bi-monthly or quarterly mobile clinics. Our teams of legal providers and advocates could bring much-needed relief and support to survivors and their families. Next is services for survivors living with physical and cognitive disabilities. They recommended that the county prioritize funding services designed to address the special needs of survivors of gender-based violence living with disabilities. Those survivors are often invisible. They lack access to knowledge of hotlines and emergency shelters and face delays in accessing protections due to the lack of language access at organizations and agencies unfamiliar with their ADA obligations. Next is a language access plan. The county could focus on the development of a language access plan to enhance services to the underserved communities. This would require the investment of resources and include community-based organizations for whom this is a major issue in terms of access to services. Another is to facilitate access to safe and stable housing for all survivors. According to organizations and actors in the system, Pierce County's efforts to address homelessness by implementing the coordinated entry program seem to fall short when responding to the special needs of survivors. The program is also reported to be inaccessible for those who are limited English proficiency or have lower levels of literacy. So they recommend the county, in consultation with providers and survivors, explore, adopt, and implement a housing model that reflects the experiences and needs of survivors of domestic and sexual violence and human trafficking. Next is access to immigrant protections. Immigrant victims of violent crimes are eligible to apply for special protections under immigration law, which allows them to live and work legally in the United States. These protections have been created to protect immigrant victims of violent crimes and to equip the authorities with the necessary tools to investigate and prosecute those crimes. So the county should encourage law enforcement and other authorized certifiers to access available critical training regarding these protections. Next slide, please. BWJP noted that up-to-date, trauma-informed, culturally relevant training and support are needed for all providers. The constant turnover of staff within governmental and non-governmental agencies responding to gender-based violence makes it challenging to provide consistent service. Agencies lack the resources to regularly send their staff to conferences and trainings, and the county should seek and promote ways in which providers and responders can benefit from self-paced, in-place training with online expert technical assistance and support. And finally, BWJP recommends the creation of a coordinated community response team. It looked that there are many coordinating groups, one for the courts, one among attorneys, et cetera. And obviously, as we've heard, coordination is critical to closing gaps in services and gaining knowledge and information on what the county is doing well and where services could be enhanced. And there are federal grants that are available to support such efforts. And more detail on potential coordinated community response can be found in the full report, which is online at the county's website as well. So with that summary, I'm happy to answer any questions anyone would have.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the work of the performance audit on this and the performance audit committee for the study and the good information. I think it provides us some good roadmaps to move forward with. Let me check with my colleagues and see if there are any questions. Councilmember Hitchin.
Not a question, more a kind of a follow-up of where we are with some of these activities, along with the work that the clerk's office has been doing in consultation with our different providers and advocate groups. We will eventually be looking at how we can allocate the money that was set aside in our budget during the 24-25 adoption. If you remember, I asked that we have $500,000 set aside to invest in some of the recommendations here. We had to do that before we knew exactly what the recommendations were, so we know them now. And I've been working with the Pierce County Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the clerk's office, Crystal Judson, just to really see, because there's a lot, and it's only $500,000, and that's not going to get all these recommendations. So really, where do we think will be the biggest impact for how victims interface and work that we can do to try and just make the system better. And so really looking at supporting the agencies that are doing the advocates work. So we actually have people coming in to be those language advocates or advocates that speak a different language, or people that are going to work with the clerk's office here in the courthouse. And then the other part is the civil legal aid, the access to legal services. So we're kind of talking about how that will work, and I'm even working with staff to figure out how to roll that out. But just that's where we are. We can't do all the things. The other wonder is this said we needed a language access plan. I noticed, because I just randomly looked, we did a language access plan, or we did something around language access for Pierce County several years ago through performance audit, and I noticed in that performance audit that law enforcement wasn't part of any part of it. It was all like kind of the services of like PPW and the assessor treasurer and the, you know, when they go to vote, but it wasn't law enforcement. And I didn't know, it'd be interesting to kind of dust off that report and see if we've done any of the things that were recommended in there and how they're going, and then how we could try and do some improvements around some of the things that came out of here in relation to the recommendations that came out of that, specifically looking at language access to government. So those are my comments. I just want to truly thank the Battered Women's Justice Project applied, and I think that we really have benefited, even just the connections that have been created that and the networking that happened, the mapping that they did where they pulled in so many different voices, and then the hours and hours and hours of the different advocate groups, the clerk's office, the courts, law enforcement that came in and gave up their time to help us better understand. We got a lot out of this on many levels. So just my thanks go to everybody that took some time, whether it was 20 minutes or 20 hours to do the work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hitchin. And thank you for all your work in the area of domestic violence, and particularly want to note the work you've done around missing and murdered Indigenous people, that particularly women, working and representing the county at a statewide level on that, and where it's so important here. And I know you've brought a key voice to that whole conversation, and so that's greatly appreciated. I think you've covered, I've had a little tick, you covered most everything I wanted to, so I thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from council members? Seeing none, I did say earlier, and I think I had a request for to see if there was any just public comment on any of the presentations you've had here. Not necessarily get into a Q&A, but love to hear feedback. If there's a question, we might be able to follow up. And so I will go ahead and open up a public hearing. And if there's anyone in the room wishing just to make any comment, please come up to the podium. You'd have 3 minutes. Please direct your comments to the chair. Seeing no one in the room moving to come up to the podium, we'll go ahead and Mr. Weinsberry online.
Yes, sir. For any members of the public who wish to provide comment, press the raise hand icon in Zoom or *9 on your telephone keypad. And there are no hands at this time, Vice Chair.
All right. Well, I do want to thank all those who stayed with us. I do see that we have Maria and Sajuta, who've worked so hard on this committee, were signed in and listening, and we want to make sure we do thank you for your work and what you've brought, and we hope to put it to good work, to good use, and perhaps work with you in the future. With that, Mr. Vedder, thank you very much for your work on this. That does ensure that we meet the requirements of our charter, which that items from the performance audit be presented in an evening meeting. Speaking of which, we have coming up 2 in-district meetings in the near future. One is the County Council District Number 5 meeting, which will have another performance audit presentation on traffic fatalities in Pierce County, and that is this Thursday, April 18th at 6:30 at the Mid-County Community Center. And then we have another in-district council meeting coming up, Council District Number 2, in-district council meeting Wednesday, May 1st, 2024 at Milton City Hall. Do you have any performance audit presentations? Okay. So this is how we're able to meet some of those. We look forward to that. More information can be found on our website on upcoming meetings, on the gender violence, and this study can be found on our performance audit page. Is there any other business or announcements from council members or from staff? Seeing no other business before today, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.